if I were to use this book in a classroom, I think it would have to be with some high schoolers, without a shadow of a doubt. Most of the books that I've read up until this point were like middle school grade, but obviously, I mean, the characters themselves are like 16, 18, 20 years old. So the kids, at least. So Malalti, I believe, is 16. So this would probably be junior, senior English class, probably, right? Where we're talking about current events and things. We could jump into this and really dive deep. I think that if you're going to teach any type of story where trauma is involved, especially wartime or time trauma where hate is associated with it, it often is. I think that it's important to give a lot of disclaimers. You know, a lot of YouTubers do that. Like, beware, this has this in it, this has this in it. And I think, I mean, and that goes without saying, but maybe having them read parts of it if kids opt out, because a lot of the times parents will do that. You know, they will opt them out of reading a book like this, even though it can be a very powerful learning tool against something as adverse as hatred, especially in modern times. This book talks about the struggle to understand despite hard times. It is so much harder to understand one another when everybody's having a hard time. And so one thing I think that would be really important, as someone who grew up hearing about what World War II was like, first generation Dutch, I think that hearing the comparisons, teaching the idea of perspective would be a great way to kind of focalize the conversation. Because if you don't, again, like I've always said, whenever you're teaching literature that's really like tough subjects, you have to keep a focus. Otherwise, you can tread into dangerous territory. And you want this to be a good, positive learning experience, despite how much negative elements are in this book. So, you know, I picked those passages on purpose where you could talk about, you know, the perspective of the Chinese, the perspective of the Malaysian, and really diving deep into that and saying, well, they have this point, they do have a point here, and they have a point here, and how those perspectives impact and change the environment around them, the weight of their sky, the place for which they live, and how living in certain areas will impact your thinking. And I think that in and of itself could be a powerful teaching tool, or a good kind of backdoor, as Malalti likes to call it, a little backdoor into the novel. Because at the core of it, one can discuss perspective and how it changes based on where you live. I think that if you wanted to maybe draw comparisons to other conflicts, I think that would have to be done super carefully. Like how I kind of touched on very lightly race riots that have gone on in the States. I think it's dangerous when you try to compare two different struggles in two different areas. Henceforth, location matters. Location, 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 right? Just because it walks, talks, and acts like a conflict in another completely area, like continent, doesn't mean they can be equated. Are they similar? Definitely. But you have to be careful, especially if you're trying to use it as a way to kind of build off prior knowledge. Like, remember, this is kind of what's happened in the States. We can kind of use that as a jumping point. I think that you would be better off teaching a little bit about the history of Malaysia and kind of like I think I mentioned earlier about just geographic location. And I don't know. I personally like it, building from history and building up new prior knowledge rather than trying to build off what they already got. I know, crazy. Usually I would say the opposite. But in this case, it might be better to, like, you want to talk about perspective, let's give them a new one right off the bat. Let's learn about the history of Malaysia. Let's teach a new perspective right off the bat. It could be a good entry point too, especially when we're pre-teaching And Mary says, we're all done. All done. I think we're all done. Yeah, we're all done. Oh, is it right? Is it right? Oh, you want to come and teach perspective? Characterization? She's my cutie girl. Yes, she is. She's my cutie.